Right. We should be live now, so
Ooh.
bear with me, everyone, while I get this all set up. It is a pain in but to get these things shared out, and I actually have to change a setting when I do this so people can comment. But I don't feel like paying like $15 a week to get the premium service of this, so this is free, and free is better.
Free's the best. Yeah. Free is always a winner.
Alright, I need to share it to the group. So riveting. We already have one viewer,
Yay.
2 viewers. Somebody drop a comment so we can just make sure that's working for us.
I do not see a comment yet.
Yep, Alexis Johnson.
Well, hello there, Alexis Johnson. How are you?
One final thing to check and make sure it's all going according to plan. Yep, everything's, as you like to say, groovy.
Groovy. Everything's groovy. Yeah, that is my word. When I say groovy, I want people to think of either me or Bruce Campbell.
There you go.
No.
Signature. Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. I have Carietta Dorsch tonight with me. So, without further ado, please introduce yourself to all the fine folks.
Hello there. I'm Carietta Dorsch, an author, voiceover artist, audiobook narrator, a lover of horror. Even though I've written other genres, I've dabbled with romance and true crime. Overall, horror, extreme horror, splatterpunk. Anyways, that's me in a nutshell.
With everything you've written so far, what has been your favorite?
My favorite probably is "Oh Come All Ye Fearful" that I wrote with Sarah DeRosa, the Christmas splatterpunk novel that me and her wrote together. That's probably my favorite.
Right off the bat, there's a recommendation for everyone watching. So,
It is just straight to the throat.
I'll make sure we got a very fun.
Hey, Marie. Hey.
All right, so going back to the beginning, what got you started on your writing journey?
Well, my writing journey is definitely unique. So I don't know how many people know. I was incarcerated for 12 years. So realistically, you can read an entire prison library. So during my bid, I actually was at the county jail still. I sat there for 4 years, and I literally read every book that they had in their little library because it was just a cart. It was just a little 4-wheel cart that they would push around, and they would be like, library call, and you'd have to come to the door and get a book. And I had read every book that was on there. And I was just sitting there one day, and I was like, man, I don't, what, I need something to read. And that's when I started to write my own stories to give myself something to actually read, because I would be writing, but I'd be reading as I was writing, because I would still be like transporting myself in a book that I wanted to read. So that's how it started. Was I didn't have any books to read.
So you started writing your own.
Yeah.
Is there a book that you read while incarcerated that has stuck with you since then?
I think, and the book that I read close to, I think I was already like 7 or 8 years into my 12-year bid, and I came across an author named Edward Bunker. Now, Edward Bunker, a lot of people might not know him by name, but if anyone had seen Reservoir Dogs, he played Mr. Blue in the one scene that he's in. That's Edward Bunker. So I think he did like 17 or 18 years with Danny Trejo in San Quentin during and he wrote a book called Little Boy Blue, and that book was just, it will forever hold a place in my heart and in my mind. It's the most authentic prison story. It's the most accurate depiction of what it actually is, and just the power and the way that he just can say some of the most thought-provoking things with so little words.
Right.
That book stuck with me.
That'd be that'd be one for everybody to look up if they were interested in maybe like to see where you came from or what helped you along the way. So,
yeah.
all right. Well, we got a very poignant question
Ooh.
from Marie.
Is this curtain? Well, actually, no. So this curtain, I'm in my sound booth at the moment. So this is the curtain that's behind me. That's not hiding. Just ignore any subtle moans or groans that you may hear or splashes going on in the background. No, this is actually just like my sound deafening curtain, because in front of me is all the sound panels and my microphone and everything that I use to make those lovely ear movies that you listen to. The characters that I come up with when I change my voice up and do impressions and create characters for you. So this is all part of the madness of what you get to hear when you plop my voice in your ear hole. So no bodies.
With writing, now that you're crossing over a bit into narration, what is different for you?
Is the difference of writing and narrating?
Right.
So writing, I have fun creating an entire world. But I think with narration, it's the fact that I get to make the creator's day. I get to make the creators smile by bringing their characters to life and making their book into, essentially, it's an ear movie, because I'm not the plain Jane narrator that's just going to read through stuff with monotone, because there are some monotone narrators and there's some that do not act the voices, and when I do it, I want to make the author happy instead of myself, I guess. So with my
Right.
writing, I'm making myself happy, whereas when I'm narrating, I want to make the author just pleased with the performance.
What made you want to start getting into narration?
Well, ever since I was like a wee little laddie, um, I always loved doing voices. I always loved acting. When I grew up, I was a huge fan of Chris Farley. And, when I was a little bitty girl, I would look at the television. I would just be like, I want to grow up like this guy. This is before I knew that he was like speedballing and doing all the crazy nonsense. But, but when I
help along the way, yeah.
but when I watched him on, SNL, I'm just like, in a band down by the river. I wanted to be funny. I wanted to be a character that people would remember. I wanted to act. So during middle school, I took drama for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I took drama for 3 years. And then, of course, prison, I was like, everything was kind of a downhill. I did read aloud stories in jail, though. When I started writing, I would get some of my prison buddies, and I would be like, "Hey, come to my cell around this time. I'll read this to you, see what you think." And I would basically act out the story, and
Yeah.
people loved it. But for a long time, I had put that down because I was just like, I'm not going to do it because for a long time, people would either say that my voice was annoying, that I talked too much, that they didn't like my voice. I had a lot of stuff going on, and it was mainly peer pressure that got me into it. I started doing TikTok lives, and some of my friends, like Marie and a couple of the regulars that would come into my lives, they would constantly badger me with the fact, hey, do you do this, or do you do ASMR, or do you do audio? You should. And I'm just sitting there like, no, I don't. No, I do not. I don't want to. It's too time consuming. And then it was basically kind of like a lost art that I shunned for a long time due to the fact that people would say that it was crap, and it was, and then I was kind of bullied into doing it. And then I found out how much I really did used to love acting, used to love doing it, because that's how I treat my audiobooks, is I treat it as an acting performance. I treat it like a
Yeah.
little script. So
Yeah. I think that people that might want to get into narration or something can learn from that. Like,
yeah,
it's not a, it shouldn't be a straightforward reading, like you said. It should
yeah,
be have all the emotions of the story you're actually narrating.
yeah,
I
exactly.
agree. I was first introduced to your narrator voice through Smashed, Wrecked, Gone,
Yeah,
and I've since listened to Night of the Living Sex Doll. Both of these stories are written by Jason Nickey, but
yeah,
narrated by you. So,
yeah.
um, what other narrations can people find right now? And then, are if there's any others in the near future that you can point to if they want to check out.
Yeah. So I have recorded my own book, Beautiful Violence, which is an erotic horror, extreme horror kind of short novelette. I've recorded the novel Lot Lizard Stew by Chuck Nasty, the short story The Hate Bug by J.M. Goki, Possessed by Love by Z. Martin, which I think that's a novella. I'm not sure. Well, the technicality there of word counts and whatnot. And my poetry book, BDSM, should come out soon. And currently, I am recording. I don't know if he's in here. He should be. I told him I was here. By a wonderful author by the name of Christopher Rufty. Currently, I am recording his book, Lipstick Wings, which is just, it is so good. It is such a good, and it's not just because I'm doing the narration. That's a plus, but the book itself is so good. So
There you go, folks. If
it
you
it is,
want to check out some of the narrations that Carietta has done or is going to be doing, there is a list to go through.
yeah.
We had another question from Marie Lestrange, and it says, "Which of your stories or books do you wish people have read? More people have read. Wish
uh,
people have read. I vote Man in His Can." So,
Man in his can. Well, actually, Marie, July, the Mitchell County Stories 2 comes out, and that story will be in that collection of short stories. And hopefully, the fans of that story and that collection will go towards the Screams and Cream anthology, where it originated, where it was birthed. But I actually think the one story, the one book, and it was just because it was such a deeply personal book for me that I think more people should read, is actually my romance novel. It's not even a horror book. It's a story about a young woman dealing with addiction, the trauma of losing her parents, and the realization that she's attracted to women, and she's dealing with all of this stuff at one time. And it's called Tattered. And that's the book I really wish people would show a little more love. I think it's been out for over a year and it's got like 4 reviews. I think maybe for all of the 3 people that may have read it, I hope they liked it. But that's the book I wish had more chances. People would give it more of a chance.
Tattered. So there is one recommendation from the author.
Yeah.
So I would be interested to talk to you about, I believe it's the Mitchell County Stories.
Ooh, my short story collection. Yes.
The Mitchell, wait, I might have it wrong.
Yeah.
Which is the never be? Did you? I might have this wrong altogether.
Oh.
And we talked about it a little bit at AuthorCon.
Well,
But you,
Never Be Lonely Again is the lesbian retelling of Dahmer.
that might be what I'm alluding to. And you have actually had personal correspondence with some folks who are on, I don't, who are in prison.
Oh, yeah. So
So
that's my true crime book, The
the
Happy
true crime,
Face.
the happy face. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the one we talked about a little bit. So, with that, first off, please tell the folks your inspiration behind it and what it's about.
So are we discussing the Dahmer or the true crime?
Let's go with the truth. We're going to discuss them all, but
Okay.
so
Okay. Which one
deal-
first?
dealer's choice, dealer's choice, whichever
Uh,
one you think. Let's go with the Dahmer.
okay. So with the lesbian retelling of Dahmer, Never Be Lonely Again. I didn't put a trigger warning in that book. For me personally, I think if you look at that cover and you think it's not going to be triggering, that's your own fault.
I don't know if it'll show up very well, but
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I don't. Um,
it's
what I,
bloody.
re- yeah, what I really wanted to do with that book was I didn't just want to do a fictionalization of Jeffrey Dahmer. Basically, it is a retelling. Most of the pivotal points of Jeff's life is in there, just retold in a different manner. The reason why I did that was because I wanted to kind of take Jeff out of it in a sense and solely try to go inside of the mind of someone like Jeff and make them go through the same actions that he did and the same thoughts that he did in order to really dive into their psyche to try to understand why, how, what for, and try to really showcase the depths of agony that loneliness can do and the absolute desperate bottom of the barrel vile actions that some people will take in order to not be that way.
Yeah,
But I wanted to be respectful when I wrote it. It's a splatterpunk, so it holds no limits. It shows you the very bloody gory, but if people who read it, the gore and the violence and the murder scenes are written in such a way that you're seeing it through Dahmer's eyes. So it's not grotesque. It's not uh vile in a sense that you're seeing it through her eyes, so you're seeing it as this beautiful act, as this passionate act. You're seeing it as this, and that's really what makes it a disturbing read, is that I had portrayed these scenes of vile, just ew, into these beautifully, kind of almost erotic scenes.
yeah.
But that's how that type of person would have viewed it. And
So yeah, changing up the POV of what you would normally um, see a story from to
Yeah.
something else. It gives you a different perspective and gives you a whole new tool set to work with, really,
Yeah.
as an author.
Yeah.
So that is interesting and fun to think about. But like you said, the cover is something. So when you look up this book and you see the cover,
It's
it's
so Never
something.
Be Lonely Again and Oh Come All Ye Fearful are probably my two most just graphic covers. Those two covers are just gnarly.
So who does your covers for you?
So the cover of Never Be Lonely Again was done by he doesn't really do book covers. He only does like death metal CD album covers. His name is Neil Marr.
Yeah.
And that's who did the Never Be Lonely cover. So usually it's different. Every book has a different artist, so I try to like find whoever has the certain style. Like in my mind, when I write a book, I have this weird thing about me that I need to always have a title first. I have no idea why. I can't write it unless I have a title. But as soon as I have the title in my mind, I know instantly what I want the cover to look like. And then that's when I scrounge the depths of Facebook and I start looking for artists. Who has the style I'm wanting? Is it you? No. Is it you? And I start looking for different. And I found him, and he was originally, like I said, a death metal CD album cover person. And I was like, dude, have you ever done a book cover? He's like, no. I'm like, do you want to?
So
And
yeah,
that's how
I
I found
mean,
him.
being an artist like that, you're lucky you can read the title. Then that's
Yeah.
all I'm gonna say.
Oh gosh, yeah. He's lucky. It's like.
Yeah, basically.
I actually had a funny thing about that. Originally, I had to get him. I had to like say that because originally the first draft of it, that's what the font was. I was just like, "Can we make it a little more?" He's like, "Yeah, sure."
We need some readability, a little bit more. Just you know,
Uh,
take it down
yeah,
to 60%. So with that, I was reason I bring up that is with the covers and stuff. I notice some. It's a mix, but some playfulness with your covers too.
yeah, yeah.
So like cannibalistic loneliness.
That was Crystal Bayman did the cover for that one. She actually did the cover of that one. I've had like the Mitchell County Stories was done by Elridge Grandpappy.
Oh,
Uh,
Christy
yeah,
Aldridge.
there you go. That person did my book cover. And then "Oh Come All You Fearful" was like I think his name's like George something or another. That was probably the most I've ever put into a cover because that sucker was, but it was well worth it because man, it's just immaculate. Um,
And then with Tattered, it's very playful, very
yes,
fun. It's a
Tattered.
very
Marie Lestrange, one of my really dear friends, Marie Lestrange actually did the cover for Tattered. She did the cover for my true crime book, Happy Face: A Family of Monsters. She did the cover of that as well.
now is that with Happy Face? Is that available on Amazon? Because I cannot find it.
Happy Face: A Family of Monsters is written under a pseudonym, Nicole D. Phoenix, because I wanted to keep these genres separated out of respect of the families, the people involved, and just to keep it academic. Because I knew that if I wrote it under my name that I write fiction under, no matter that I've written horror, romance, blah, 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 that I don't think it would have been taken as serious. And I wanted the true crime to be taken as an academic tool because that's why I originally wrote it, was for it to be used for upcoming criminologists, for students, for enthusiasts to be able to study and analyze. And that's why I chose to put it under a different name, which is Nicole D. Phoenix, which is my true crime author name.
OD Phoenix. So yeah, that's what we had spoken about. It was basically it's true crime and
Yeah.
is it labeled under nonfiction?
It should be nonfiction. Yeah, it should be.
So you talked about it being something that people in the future could use as a case study
yeah,
and hopefully help in um, solving crimes of that sort of nature. So yes, that's what sparked my
it's
interest.
it's a book that it offers the unique uh, perspective of you're having a one-on-one conversation with Keith Hunter Jesperson, the happy-faced killer, a serial killer who killed 9 women. You're having a one-on-one conversation with the man when you're reading it because he is talking directly to the reader about his life. He's 71 years old. He's not going to live forever. And he's never had the opportunity to really tell his story and tell it completely, authentically, like him by himself. He's shared his story before with a couple authors who have taken sentences that he has written and then reword them in their journalistic kind of thing. And in my opinion, that dilutes any attempt to be able to truly analyze.
Yeah,
Because you're taking their words and you're making it your own, and what
paraphrasing.
what a reader is then reading is the author's take on it. They're not reading the actual criminal's take on it. So my goal when I began corresponding through the letters with him and accepting phone calls and all manners of correspondence with Keith Jesperson was I wanted the book to present his voice completely. And that would allow the reader, the student, the criminologist, the lawyer, the FBI, whatever, it would allow them to truly see how he talks, how he phrases, how he feels, how he discusses certain subjects, the words that he uses, the way that he's so blunt, raw, the way that he'll go on, pages and pages about the color of his frickin' truck. But then when he actually talks about like choking the life out of someone, it's one sentence and then he moves on to the next thing. It's like you really get to see what kind of things are really important to
Right.
this man. And it allows the reader to truly study someone that messed up in the head. Because the one thing that struck me out of all of our correspondences together, all the phone conversations, he never ever says that he's sorry. He says that he hates being locked up and he would never do it again because he hates prison, but not once does this man ever come close to ever saying that he's sorry for what he's done.
No
And
remorse.
for me, that was just baffling.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, to preserve exactly what
Yep.
the person says, I
Yep.
think is the most important part
It's
of it.
it's almost like a historical archive in a way, because you know, just like any dictator or vile figure of the world, their manifestos or blah blah blah. It allows you to really study and learn from it, and in order to prevent it and possibly see warning signs in someone. If
Yep.
someone starts doing some of the things that Keith talked about in his book, I'm going to start, looking at the person sideways and saying, so you're
Yeah.
one of those.
Yeah. Tell me more. I'll be over here.
Yes. What is this? Tell me about your father, because he has father issues up the hoo-ha.
Yeah.
Um,
So, which is a common theme, it
yep.
seems. Parental issues, we'll say.
Yep.
So,
Either hugged too much or hugged not enough.
gotta find that Goldilocks zone. All right, that was very fun hearing about that. Like I've been,
Yeah.
that was one of the main things I wanted to talk to you about, and um, If
He's
people probably didn't know that you have this book out there because it is under a
yeah,
pseudonym.
yeah.
I think we had there's a cat. Uh,
The true
my
crime was very eye-opening, and just to say this, I write to a lot of people like Happy Face, so hopefully in the future there will be more true crime books in the same presentation. The key is to talk to these people and get them to believe that you're their friend, and to get them to open up, because they're not going to open up to a journalist. They're not going to open up to a cop. They're not going to, that's, yeah, but a friend they will, and that's the thing that's mostly, it's so mentally taxing to be like, "How was your day? I hope you're doing well." And you're talking to a monster. You're talking to a sick, twisted individual, and you're like, "Hope you're doing good."
right.
Uh, just to be able to extract the valuable information from them, So hopefully, fingers crossed, there will be more true crime books in the future. I'm currently talking to 12 different serial killers.
Yeah.
So one of them is bound to hop onto the wagon of telling their story eventually. Um, so
That will be a future publication, hopefully.
yeah,
So,
hopefully, fingers
um,
crossed.
alive or dead, if you had a top bucket list person just so you could talk to and pick their brain and try and get down to the nitty gritty of what makes them who they are, who would that be for you?
I think it would probably be Jeffrey Dahmer. I would want to see how close I got in my attempt to truly get inside of his head when I wrote my horror book, Never Be Lonely Again. I would like to analyze and talk to him just to see how close that I actually got inside of his head.
Holly Landis dropped us a comment, says, love true
Ooh,
crime and hope you write so many more. I wrote
yep,
Charlie Manson before his passing, and it's always fascinating to correspond like that. I'd love
yeah.
to hear others' experiences with this. And I think,
So yeah,
oh, well,
no, I didn't have a chance to write Charles Manson because I was still in prison when he passed, but I do have several letters from Charles Watson, who was also, he was his right hand man. So, yeah. He refuses to tell his story, though. He says it's already out there and he's found God. So we stopped writing a while back, but
yeah. Um, I think I think you get a lot of this crossover with the horror fiction crowd and the true crime crowd because it's almost like a horror
yeah,
fiction when you're comparing true crime to horror fiction. Horror fiction is like washing the taste out of your mouth of the true crime you just read
yeah,
because that really happened to real
yeah,
people. So you
yeah,
kind of need that escape, but you kind of like the flavor of the horror
yeah.
as well. So
And a lot of horror is inspired by true events.
yeah,
Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, The Strangers. I mean, they were all loosely, very loosely. Uh, the writer of those stories had read those true events. For like, well, what if we have someone like that in this story? Let's do that. Let's
yeah,
and boom, there's a new movie idea. So
which is a lot of or kind of the fun part of writing the fiction aspect because you get to cherry pick whatever you want from
yeah,
which wherever you want. So
yeah, exactly.
if you're inspired by something and you read about a true crime that's truly fucked up, you can take that and run with it and make it your own.
Yes,
And
yes,
in that, you're just you're creating something very parallel to something that happened, but also you can tweak it to how you want it to be, how you
Yep.
might see it in your head. So this cat
Yeah.
is crazy.
Yeah, there was a couple stories in my short story collection, the Mitchell County stories. There were two stories in that collection that were actually loosely inspired by people that I had interacted with in prison because it's similar to their crimes. So there was one story in there about the man who throws his wife into an oven. And I was not friends or anything. He was just in the block, and he was when you're sitting on the railing with someone, you're having coffee with somebody, you're like, look at that sick mother over there, and you're like, what did he do? And he's like, well, you listen to this. That mother did this, 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 and that's how I found out about this person who had threw his wife into an oven. So I'm just like, that is like bonkers. Like what?
Yeah,
And it stuck with me, and it became a short story in my Mitchell County stories. The other one was the man who truly believes that if he kills this woman's child, that it will allow her to focus on him and she'll fall in love with him. There was a man in prison that had this exact mindset, and that's why he was there. Um, and
yeah.
it's totally insane. It's such a warped perception of reality. Like that's just unfathomable to me. So that always stuck with me, and that became a short story in the Mitchell County stories. Which Mitchell County is named Mitchell County because the majority of my prison time was at Avery Mitchell Correctional Institution in North Carolina, and all men's prison. If anyone was curious, because I was looking like this, which was, you know, it was very difficult because I have problems going to a theater now because you can't bring in outside snacks. But anyways, I was at a all men's prison, and it was called Avery Mitchell, and it was actually in Mitchell County. It was in Spruce Pine, Mitchell County. And that's actually the name of the book. That's where it comes from, is because I was like, you know what? They took enough years of my life. I'm going to try to make some money on these motherfuckers.
Right?
And I named it Mitchell County
And
because I was like, these people are vile. These people are just ugh. And I'm going to make this town the worst town ever.
I mean, it's experiences you
So,
live, so absolutely draw from it.
yeah.
And then you have the one book out now. Who's to say more stories out of Mitchell County don't come along eventually?
Yep. Yeah.
It's just a shitty place, USA. You know.
Yeah. Definitely just full of just backwoods mayhem.
All
So,
right. Um, I'm getting a message. So, trying to see what we've gone over just naturally because the conversation goes that way often.
oh yeah, squirrel. That's how I am. Usually I'll start yapping and then it will lead on to. So the one thing about, yeah, here we go again. Woo, squirrel.
Yep.
Um, the one thing about prison is you always had to keep like talking, and because that's how your days went. And
Yeah.
so you would have to just keep going. And I think that was a habit that I've always like I still fall into, is like I'll be talking and then that will remind me of something else and I'll be like, oh, and I'll go to that subject and then maybe I'll get back to that one, maybe not. You might have to remind me, and then I'll zip on back over here.
You're
And
literally
so,
preaching to the choir on that one. Yep. It'll be 3 hours later. So to say all that is to bring it back to the original point, which was yes, I was there. Um,
exactly.
with writing, is there any advice that you received that helped you in the beginning? And is there a
Uh,
separate piece of advice that you would offer folks now who are just starting out?
when I first started writing, I didn't really have anyone there. I
Yeah.
just had, the occasional people that would come to my cell and they'd be like, bro, that was good, bro. Keep writing that, bro. And I'd just be like, "Ah, thanks, wonderful," because that's, and they would come back to myself, "Bro, you got another story?" I was like, "Nah, not yet." And he's like, "Get to writing," and I guess it was the people that was like really enthusiast, really like amped up. I think maybe that's what kept me writing, was the people that actually were like excited for me to write something, which was so wild to me.
Yep.
Uh, I
So
would
that's
say,
really a pointer to all these people, a lot of these folks we have in here that are watching now, is this is the impact that you have on writers
yeah,
when you review or you talk about
yeah,
something that we have
exactly,
written. Is we might be really down on ourselves
exactly.
often, a lot of the times, and then you drop that and we read it and it picks
Yep,
us right back up and carries us to the next one.
yep, it does. And like every time they would come to my door and they were so excited, that was almost like receiving a 5-star review. That was like your standing ovation. That was their post on Facebook or Instagram. That was their TikTok video saying this was awesome. That was their. It's important. It is. My advice to upcoming authors, or just authors in general that might be having a bad day, I don't know, or a good day and they just want to listen to what the hell I have to say to them. I don't know. I don't make the rules. But my advice would be, write what you would want to read in a book. I think that's because that's what got me to writing, is because I didn't have anything to read. So I wrote what I would want to read. I didn't write what I think Tom, Dick, and Harry and Joe Bob would like to read. I wrote what I would like to read in a book.
Right.
And I think that would be my advice. Write what you would want to read. And don't write for someone else's like eyeballs. Write for your eyeballs.
Yeah.
And boom. So
Because no matter what it is, your audience will find you.
yes.
So
Yeah.
there are very like-minded individuals out there.
Yep. No matter how quiet or slow burn or extreme or splattery or whatever, someone will be in the same mindset and want to read that same exact book that you wrote. Um,
While we're in between, if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask
yes.
Carietta, just drop them in the
Yes.
comments.
I love questions. You can ask me anything. You can call me whatever, as long as it's not late for supper. We're just hanging out like a hare and a biscuit. Ask me those questions there. So, yeah.
Uh, this is a very good question for you, I think, because you did start writing primarily outside of social media, really. So,
Yeah. I never
what,
even seen a computer until I was like 27.
which is kind of wild in itself, because I remember playing around on computers in kindergarten, which would have been
Yeah.
very, very a long time ago.
Yeah. So
But
for the people that didn't know, I was 17 when I went to prison. 17. So from 17 until, so I was, yeah. So,
so what has been this is the question. What has been the biggest surprise to you after joining the horror community?
the biggest surprise, I would say, the biggest surprise, how like accepting people are of me, because in prison when I first started transitioning, I was like the laughing stock. I was bullied. I was either, tried to punk down. I had to fight constantly. I basically was frickin' Rocky Balboa and Ivan Drago every frickin' day, trying to, I will break you, having to fight every frickin' day, and that because people would just,
Yeah,
they would either just try to like, I don't know, sometimes I use like prison slang and it's not this. I'm trying to figure out what punk down is in normal people terms. Uh, bitch out.
punk out,
I don't know.
punk out.
Yeah, yeah. So people would just try to like, make
Test you?
you. Yeah, they would test you. They would, or because I was transitioning and I was developing and I was becoming more feminine, it was either, they would just try to make moves that were like the very unsolicited and handsy kind.
Right.
So every day you kind of and it was just that I was so used to, because I started transitioning probably my third year of my 12 years. So I had a long time of being a woman in a men's prison. But when I got out and I found the internet for the first time, after I had the long sessions of adult entertainment out of the way, I found social media, and uh, and then when I found the communities, the horror communities, because I will be completely honest with you, in prison, outside of some early Layman, some very early Lee, and like one or two Brian Keene books, splatterpunk was not a thing that I even knew existed. It was not a genre that I was like, this is what I'm going to write in, because at the time when I was creating some of these stories, I was like, ha, I'm testing limits. And then I
Right.
get out and I discover some of this stuff. I'm like, oh, no, I'm not. And
Oh, it's like that. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, oh, no.
Edward Lee.
So, and people give me a pass there. I was in prison. I don't know these wonderful authors. I didn't know them until 2 years ago, because I've only been out for 2 years. So I'm still learning author names, constantly too, which ones to read, which ones to not read, because occasionally there's the author that you're like, nah, you don't want to read those.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, yeah, like
Acceptance.
so acceptance, the fact that people just kind of was like, Carietta is Carietta, and she's pretty groovy, and she uses the word groovy for anything. So yeah.
There you go. We actually got a really great question from
Ooh.
the one and only Bobby Jean Murphy. Any
Any
subject that you refuse to write about?
Not yet. No. I have written some very vile things. I have in the Christmas Splatterpunk book I wrote with Sarah DeRosa, that book had animal cruelty, it had cruelty to a child. I mean, it had cruelty to degrees that even made the editor say he had to tap out and take a week break before he finished editing, because it was so just ew. So I haven't reached the limit yet where I would, I haven't reached my limit of writing yet, but I would say subjects I refuse.
I'm sure there's subject matters out there.
Yeah, I would say anything that is anything to do with a minor that is pornographic in nature or erotic. Um, that would probably be something that I would say no. If I would be able to find a way that something was written like the film Miller's Girl or something like that, possibly, but something that's just solely the sole purpose is to be erotic, I think no, I couldn't do that. I think that's a line I won't cross, because that's just sick and just ew. So yeah.
Next question is from John Russell, but I'll let you read it. I've been reading these,
Ooh,
and we got a narrator here, folks.
John Russell. Oh, I want to see what kind of voice I would have for John Russell. Okay, John Russell, don't this you're getting the Casa Bonita uh Black Bart pirate voice. Are there any killers you've spoken to who scared you? Casa Bonita. Anyways, any killers you've spoken with scare you? I will say no. Because they're all in prison on multiple life sentences. They're usually all in their late 60s, 70s. There's been a couple in their 80s. So even if they did manage to get out, uh,
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah. So no. Um, I will say there has been some people when I was actually in prison that scared the bejesus out of me, but I think it was because they were there with
Proximity. Yeah,
and
proximity.
yeah, and they were able to put hands and touch me. There were some people that scared me there because I actually. So there was a suspected killer, a serial killer. His name was Pittman in North Carolina, and I actually was in a block with him, and he scared me. He really did because he had a thing for white women. So I was scared because we're in an all men's prison. I'm like, oh well, shit.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, so there we go.
Holly
Cassie,
Landis had a really great question as well.
what character from your works do you personally relate to the most, and why? I will say, uh, two accounts. One, I will say my two. Well, I will say Tattered, my romance novella, because she was actually written. Her name was Salem Moon Richardson, and she was named after what I would have named my daughter if ever I would have had one until I lost the ability to do that. And she lives in the same town I grew up. She works in the same place that I worked, and she's dealing with pretty much raising herself the way that I did, and she's fighting her mind because she's attracted to women and she's trying to figure out what the hell that means and why, because she was raised to believe that's not a thing. That doesn't exist. No, that's just a figment of your imagination. Um, so I would probably say Salem for my little romance novella, Tattered. That would be who I probably relate to the most. But I mean, there's always inklings of myself in all of my stories, such as even Never Be Lonely Again, the fact that it's lonely, and just like when I first started transitioning, it was lonely. It's still lonely. I don't really have any close friends to really talk to about my transition stuff, about my, transdom, if it will. Um, because it's a really complicated subject to truly understand unless you're actually going through it yourself. It's one of those things. And then, "Oh Come All Ye Fearful," I guess it was the final girl of that, Heather. It's the trying to live to the expectations of others. Marshall Steele, who hates Christmas because, I do too. I could not stand Christmas time to come because I don't want to go into a store and have to listen to Mariah Carey 5 times before I get back out of the store. I think that's a living hell. Uh, so, yeah, I think there's a piece of me in all my stories, you know. But
I think that's
Tattered, final answer, Tattered.
check out Tat. Come on, a little piece of Carietta. So, um, well, I think that goes with any writers who are, putting pen to
Yeah.
paper. We just put little bleed on the page,
Yeah.
whether it's a little drop or a whole bucket. It's
I
just going to happen.
I think it's kind of like what Stephen King said way back when in his little book. You write what you know, and that's really, you can't really write a character if you don't know what their thoughts are or how they feel. You have to kind of write those feelings that you know of.
Yeah.
Um,
So that was a awesome question. Christmas time. I don't like Christmas time either. Because everything smells like cinnamon, and I hate cinnamon. So go into a store, and I'll like smell it aisles away. Then like Walmart, I'll be like, I'm avoiding that whole section.
yeah, yeah. At Halloween time, it's just pumpkin spice everything everywhere. Pumpkin spice for a month and a half.
I can deal with that. Plus, it's spooky. Um,
Yeah.
so when you do write, do you consider yourself a pantser, a plotter, or a hybrid of both?
I I have no idea.
Do you know the terms?
No.
So answer would be you sit down and you write in almost a stream of consciousness of as it's coming to you, you're dictating it out onto the
Okay.
page. And then a plotter is you're going to think about it way before time to actually write out bullet points that you want to hit throughout your story, and then stick to that when you actually go to write it out. So you have everything plotted out and you're hitting point to point to point. Now, a
Mm,
hybrid, which is kind of a new term, and it seems like what a lot of folks fall into is they like to plot out some of the areas in the story that they get to, but they leave themselves open a lot more to interpretation of things that come to their mind as they're writing.
I would probably say I'm a hybrid. I'm very weird. I cannot write a story if I don't have a title. I cannot begin a story if I have a title. I can have a story idea, but I cannot begin to write until I have a freaking title because I think I have a habit of always putting the title in the story. Uh,
Yeah,
I
I
just
think I do.
I always think that's the coolest thing when you can use your book title as description in the story or a piece of dialogue and make it make sense. I think that's the coolest thing ever. So I like to toot my own horn that boom. Uh, but I
Look
need a
how clever I am.
boop boop. But I need the title before I can start writing. And a lot of times when I start writing a story, I'll have the ending written. Like I'll know exactly how the story is going to end, and then I'll write backwards. Like I'll write the entire ending out, and then I'll work to it, and I'll work backwards from the ending up. Yeah, and I also have a habit of always starting things with pieces of dialogue. I have a lot of my stories or whatnot will always start with like dialogue first because I think it's just kind of cool to jump straight into boom. Um, and so I think both because sometimes certain scenes I'm just like sitting there and I'm like, like when we were writing "Oh Come All Ye Fearful," I knew we wanted to keep some of the murder weapons Christmas themed. I just didn't know
Yeah,
what that meant. So as I was writing the scene, I'm just like Christmas theme. Aha! Eureka! We're gonna use this. So it was kind of like plotted, but not because I had to leave wiggle room in order for me to brainstorm,
yeah,
what I was going to do. Um, so both
both.
hybrid.
Yeah, I think that's really the majority of writers today. It used to be very black and white, one or the other. You couldn't you couldn't get into that gray area of a hybrid type, but I think people are realizing now, yeah, like you may. I mean, I've always said I'm a pantser, and then I started doing all these interviews, and I came up with the questions I like to ask the authors, and I'm like, well, really, there's a hybrid. So, and that's really what I am because even if I never write anything down aside from like the seed idea of a story, like you said, it would be like your ending, and you're working back from that. But aside from that, everything's all up in my head. But I'm always thinking of get to this point, which leads to this, which leads to that. So that's in a way that's plotting, but it's up to any it's up to interpretation, and anywhere it wants to get there, then that's the Panther part
Yeah.
of it. So yeah, so plotter Panther hybrid. I think a lot of there are some absolutely truly despicable people out there that are hardcore plotters, and they stick to that plot. They write it out. It'll be 5,000, 10,000 words in a plot document that for
Yeah,
their
goodness gracious.
yeah. And I'm
Can't
like,
do it. No.
where's the fun in that? Where's the creativity? So,
I
but
think I think I began doing what I do because originally, because if in prison, obviously we don't have keyboards, so it was just me, a pencil that I would have to like go get up and sharpen every page, and a
Yeah,
composition book, and that's you kind of just had to go just you didn't have time to do all the extra plot lines because that's a waste of paper. You had to like go with it.
very economic with your words.
Yeah.
So, a question I would have for you: did any of those prison stories make it out? And do you have any plans for them in the future, or have you used them at all in your published works so far?
I've used a couple prison stories so far. Um, in the Mitchell County stories,
Okay.
I do intend to, with my friend of mine who will actually help me write it eventually, whenever she actually gets her ass in gear and can do it. Actually, write my memoir with me, which will be about my 12 years of prison, which will include all those crazy, wild stories.
Yep.
Because there is a lot. I saw a lot of crap in 12 years. Uh, some of it was really wild, some of it was really scary, some of it was absolutely hysterical. Um, it is the only time that you will ever get woken up from your sleep. You're still dozing and you're hearing a grown man, how much would you pay me for my sausage? And in your mind, you're like, what in the f is he talking about? And he actually has like a summer sausage in his hand floating it around. But the way he phrases it, you're just like,
Yeah.
what is he talking about? Certain things would make you like crack up and laugh. Um, so I have that in the works. I don't know when it will be. It's whenever my co-writer has time because she has experience in writing like nonfiction formal kind of stuff, and I knew I couldn't handle the memoir by myself,
Yeah.
uh, because it's a lot to unpack. I can sit here and tell you about my time. I can sit you and give you story after story about my time in prison, but it's so just I cannot write it to save the life of me. I cannot write it. It's like
Yeah.
it starts to when I start to write it, it turns into a story then, and then I lose, you know, I
Yeah.
lose myself into like a little fiction world, and I'm just like, God Almighty, why? Um, but I can sit here and talk about it all day. I just cannot write it. So it will
Yeah.
come.
That's interesting to think about. Like you it's very hard for you to dictate your own lived
Yeah,
experiences, but um, only when you're applying it to writing and not
yeah. It's very strange.
talking about it. So there's something there. There's something to explore there too.
Yeah. I think it's really, maybe a PTSD thing, I have no idea.
Could
Maybe
be.
writing forces me to think about it more than talking, because talking, I can just give you the story and it's gone, whereas writing, it's sitting there and it's staring me in the face. Uh, I don't know. It's very strange.
That will be a very interesting book
Yeah,
to read when it's finally out there for the
yeah.
world to see. So, um, I think we are almost through everything I had. With everything we've talked about and the genres that you spoke of on the stuff you've written,
Yeah.
is there a subgenre of horror that you haven't actually got to write in yet that you are really looking forward to in the future?
Uh, I want to dabble in some quiet, kind of slow burn. I'm actually currently working on a novel, um, that is exactly that. I have a friend who's reading it at the moment. Maybe she's had it for a couple months now. She hasn't read it yet, but she's she's a mom with 2 kids, so she's got a life. She's uh, so I'm trying to dabble in maybe some more quieter, slow burn, kind of like eerie, get in your head and make it,
Atmospheric.
yeah. Because for the most part, most of my fiction so far has been right in your face. No, no holdback, no envelope not pushed. So I would like to try to write some stuff that was just a little more subtle.
Yep.
So
That's fun too. To just explore those and go almost to the polar opposite of what you've
yeah,
been doing. Just to it's almost like a test to yourself
yeah,
as well. It
exactly.
keeps it fun and creative for you. So that's very important.
And more romance. I would like to write one more romance novel to go along with my one that's just sitting by herself. She doesn't have a friend. She's just all alone. So I'd like to write one more at least, so I have 2.
See that Eric Butler joined us
Ooh,
late.
yeah.
Um, there's one final thing I want to talk to you about,
Ooh,
and I would be remiss and probably badgered and attacked if I didn't, because it made such a huge impression on everyone that got to experience it. But I'm building it up. AuthorCon 2024.
ooh.
That your first convention that you did?
Yeah, that was my very that was the one that I actually got to read out loud to. That was my very first ever uh
Book convention.
yep.
So
And then this following one was my second one. So I've only been to 2.
with that first one, you brought something with you that was so viral, so vile, so ingenious. I think that instantly won the hearts of everyone that was there. Would you like to tell the folks what was everywhere around that hotel? And
Oh, my
where did the idea for that come up, or
all,
how did you come up with that idea?
all the little cockroaches?
The
All
little cockroaches with your QR code, right?
Yes, yeah. So the little cockroaches were everywhere because people thought they were real. They were where food was, they were in the bathroom, they were on the floor, they were outside. They were everywhere. But they went to a book that is currently unpublished because I pulled the book originally because it was published with a publisher that I no longer that I just pulled because we are going to I'm going to expand the book, make it bigger, make it better, and make it just more, and it was called Unmarked Grave, and it was the very first horror book I ever wrote. And I still have the composition book of the handwritten book of that. And I was so excited to get it out into the world. And when I finally did, that's what I did. Because that was the big thing of the book was it was all about roaches. The killer in the book used roaches in all kinds of ungodly manners. So that was the theme, was cockroaches. So I would put those little things everywhere
Yep.
to try to gain attention to the book. The book itself made some impressions. I believe there were a couple authors who read it that were thoroughly impressed. It was a debut. Um, I was sad to pull it. It's currently unpublished, as I said, but it will be bigger, better, and just worth the wait when it comes back into publication. So
yeah, um, build up the anticipation for those who didn't get to
all those little
read it
roaches.
the first time. And yeah, the roaches. Eric said he found one on his dinner plate. I
Ah,
I may have had a hand in putting it on his dinner plate. I believe we were at the Thai restaurant, and we was like, and I remember we put it on his plate, and then the waitress comes over, and she's like aghast, and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And we're like, "Nah, you're cool." We had to explain to her what was up with that. So yeah,
yep,
um,
that was
it
my first con.
was a huge hit.
And I was able to do gross out that year. I wasn't able to do it this go around. I will be at Killer Pride in September. I know they don't do a gross out then, but my hope is to do gross out the next time that they have it. Uh,
Yeah, I did it. So me and you did the gross out the same year, first time. So
that was
I don't know if I would ever want to do it again.
that's when it began. That's when the peer pressure began because everyone's like, "Your voice," and I'm just like, that's when it began. Slowly but surely, they kept like picking the iceberg. They were like, "We're gonna sink this fucking Titanic. You're gonna start doing audio."
There you go.
So that's when it began.
So Bobby Jean says she still got a bag of those and needs to
Oh
send.
wow!
So
You still got
I
a
probably have one floating around here too, and it has been riding in my car forever. So
you don't know how many people, because sometimes, occasionally, I don't have a website of my own because I have no idea how to do that. But sometimes people will message me because I do sell author copies of my stuff. So you don't know how many people has messaged me after they have bought author copies, and I've slipped some of those in their packaging. And when they're like, "I thought that was real." So
tell them
yeah.
take it, lick it, take a bite, see if it is.
So
Um. All right. So with that, this next one is going to be multifaceted. Tell the
ooh,
folks what
nice.
you have coming up. Tell the folks where they can see you next in person, which would be your event,
Ooh.
and any socials you want to share with them.
Uh, I will be at Killer Pride in September, Williamsburg. Scares that care. I have TikTok, Instagram. I'm also on X recently. Facebook, obviously. It's all under Carietta Dorsch. Pretty unique name. So you can call me Carrie if you want to call me Carrie for short. I was named after the prom girl, anyways. Uh, so yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. I'm thinking about I'm trying to look at what other socials are good. But at the moment, I have Insta, TikTok, and Facebook. I'm more active on TikTok because I like being on camera. Uh, so I do that every morning. I usually do a TikTok live around like 10 o'clock in the morning time, where you get to see me in action. I'll be reading a book or doing an audition for a voice. Like this morning, I was having to do all kinds of animatronic voices. So for some reason, I've had Casa Bonita stuck in my head all day. Casa Bonita. Uh, so so yeah,
Yeah.
there we go.
Is that beautiful house translated? Right?
I think so. I don't know.
I think it's a beautiful
It's
house.
the Disneyland of Mexican restaurants in Denver, Colorado. Um, it's also premiered in an episode of South Park. Anyway, they wanted me to write a script, and for some reason, the only thing that was in my head when they said animatronics was the one at Casa Bonita. So during the audition, they said, "We want an animatronic voice." So the only thing that I could think of was like, "All right, we're going to do this audition, What in darnations? Welcome to Casa Bonita. Your waiter will be coming shortly. Welcome to Casa Bonita." So that's the only thing I could think of. So I was like, "We're gonna do it. Boom, record," and sent it off to them. So we'll see what they think.
Pretty cool though. And you do this live on TikTok?
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'll
yeah,
do.
it's like the behind the scenes type stuff.
Yeah. You'll get to see all the audiobook bloopers. You'll get to see how I'll read a paragraph and then have to stop because the last four words, they're not words at all. They're like slurred, like whatever. Like, uh, I'm trying to like it was like split like certain words like today I said splattered instead of splintered and I caught myself. I'm just like, well, that's not it. So I have
Yeah.
to go back and redo, and then you'll get to hear me read the same paragraph 5 times before I get it perfect. Um, so yeah, I do my audiobook recordings live on TikTok. I do most of my voice auditions, so you get to see all my different characters that I create. Um, Actually, I had to do a President Trump not long ago. Somebody wanted that, and I was like, "Well, I'll audition for it. Let's do it." Um, Goofy, I do all kinds of impressions. So
There you go. If folks want to reach out to you about narration, they could just DM you directly.
they can DM me directly. There are no guarantees because I do have a few projects lined up. Um, so it might be a little while uh, before I can, and it depends on like the length, etc. You know, there's factors, but I am very open to DMs. I'm very open to you just reaching out and saying, "Hey, I have this book. This is how long it is. This is what it's about. Here's the Amazon link so you can check it out. Uh, would you like to do it?" I'm more than happy with that. That's awesome. If you're some of the writers that I really, really love, you know who you are. Please reach out to me. Please do it. Uh, Me being a person who has been in prison, there's a certain prison book that came out recently. It needs a narrator. Authentic voice. Authentic voice. Uh, you know what book I'm talking about. Get that blowing in the wind there. You need an authentic felon to narrate your felony book. Uh, so we have Megan.
Megan, Megan's
Hello there, Megan.
literally joining as we're about to close this out. Classic Megan.
Goodness, Megan. Hearts and hugs, Megan. Hearts and hugs. So,
All right, so there it is. Thank you so much for joining me tonight
of
and
course.
getting to learn about you. And I think we probably barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, just a little few little things. Yeah, I have lots of layers. I'm like an onion. So, and thank you to everyone who showed up and listened to me palaver and hang out like a hare and a biscuit here with us today. Thank you.
True Southern saying right there. It's a catback. Um, all right, so thank you all for joining us and for the questions, which were amazing. Some truly amazing questions. As always, in the future, if you ever want to come back and chat with me again, the
Of
door
course.
is wide open for you.
Yeah, of course. I would love to.
Thank you, Carietta, and thank you all. We'll catch
Yeah.
you on the next one.
Stay groovy.